David, there talks about death by 1,000 cuts, eliminating, the penny first, then the nickel, who needs the dime? I mean, what's your sense of how close we are to that cashless society?
Well, cashless is pretty far away. There are 9% of American households that are unbanked, meaning that none of the adults in the household have a bank with a typical bank that you'd think of or a credit union. And there's a further, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 million households that are underbanked, meaning that they regularly use things like money orders and payday loans that people with good financial services probably don't find cost effective.
Yeah.
And this is really the heart of the story from a sort of social justice perspective, is that we think cash is the last resort of people that can't afford expensive services. And that's kind of inside out and backwards, because almost nobody that receives a transfer, whether it's a person to person transfer or a paycheck or a government benefit, ultimately, almost nobody receives those benefits in cash if they're part of the normal formal economy and they're not working sort of under the table somewhere where they're out to cheat on their taxes or something like that. Because those people ultimately need to turn payments into cash,
Right.
it's often right at that very moment where they're transforming an electronic payment into cash that they pay the heavy fees, and they also lose the benefit of recording all the payments that they make on time. If they're borrowing, the fact that they've borrowed isn't written down the same way that it is for you and I, and so they don't have a good credit history, which raises the cost of lending to them.
Right, which, everybody's talking about this growing gap, sort of economic disparity and income gap. It seems like that would contribute to. David, how close do you think we are? Death by 1,000 cuts, your phrase there. When is money dead?
Well, I don't know if it will ever completely be dead, but I also think that people who are making kind of rigid sounding predictions about the future, let's say beyond, 15, 20 years from now, I think they're kidding themselves and they're kidding the rest of us, because if you look back at what technology could or could not do, let's say 20 or 25 years ago, we just never could have predicted what we can do today. And so if that is your proxy for what the future might look like 25 years from now, if it really makes sense to do away with cash or mostly do away with it, then I think that's the direction we'll go. But meanwhile, everyone is really keen to sort of keep cutting away at the friction of money and innovating new ways, usually digital ways, to transact and store value.